Now, of course, Elon Musk is mega wealthy and can resist the hits, but sinking Tesla's stock is hitting Elon where it hurts, and it's trying to send a clear message. I can't help but take that away, that this is a veiled threat.
For a lot of the folks that wield power in this country, the economy is not just to provide, wealth and resilience, and the American lifestyle. Like, it is not just a function of market efficiency. They see it as a means of control.
Thank you so much for tuning into the Signal Sitdown, but before we get to the interview, we'd love it if you'd hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube, Spotify, or wherever you may be joining us. And please remember to give us a 5-star review because we love your feedback. Remember, it's your government, and together we'll expose how it really works and how to affect real change. Without further ado, here's the interview. Wes Hodges, welcome to the Signal Sitdown.
It's so good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Trump told us when he was checking out some Teslas with Elon Musk that everything's computer. Everything is computer, and you are the acting director of the tech policy outfit here at the Heritage Foundation. I'm so glad that we could talk to you today about crazy, crazy news. Elon Musk says X is being it's under cyber attacks constantly. The whistleblower report from an individual who worked at Meta says that the CCP was sticking its tentacles into Meta and Meta was letting it do it. And of course, the AI vision of the new administration is not only talk of the town here in Washington, D.C., it is echoing, reverberating throughout the West and throughout the world. But first, I wanted to give you the floor and explain to our listeners how you got into the tech space, how you decided as well that everything is computer and you ought to be researching this stuff.
Well, we have our top researchers getting to the bottom on if everything is computer. So we'll have a report to you on that soon. But no, I certainly didn't grow up thinking I was going to direct the Tech Policy Center at Heritage. I got into public policy soon after college back in 2017. And I was just trying to figure out how can I have a interesting career that doesn't bore me? And I ran away from law and ended up working at the Federal Society, which, built its model out of debating public policy. But, I really was more interested in where debates were happening among conservatives. And that's what led me to get my kind of policy mores from launching American Compass back in 2020 with some dear friends and colleagues. So it was there that I got my first hooks into tech policy and my fascination with it, working with the many, many excellent people, writing policy, implementing it in government, doing comms, you name it. And then a few years later, I had the opportunity to come to Heritage, and tremendous privilege to work with Kara Frederick, who's now in the White House, who was was my predecessor here, and I got to work with her for 2 years advancing our tech policy goals. So it's a tremendous honor to be able to be in this role and to be able to chat with about this stuff with you today. What a week.
Yeah, what a week indeed. Elon Musk says that X was down on Monday because it was suffering a massive cyber attack from IP addresses originating in the Ukraine area. That's kind of all we know about it so far. Elon hasn't really returned to the subject. Obviously, Elon is trying to sell Trump Teslas. He's very busy with Doge. Yeah, but nevertheless, I mean, this seems like a story that the corporate media, for one, took zero interest in whatsoever. And we're sitting here on Wednesday. The episode will release Thursday, and nobody's talking about it anymore. But I mean, this seems like a massive story if it is the case.
And they think that they can get away with it, but it turns out X is that important that people notice when it's down. And it's not just the few of us here at Heritage. The world's free speech and political news and all manner of other things, you pause that for a few hours, you don't miss that. It is a loud silence on the part of the media.
And it's interesting to me that the way they've gone about quickly discrediting this story was exactly how they went about the Hunter Biden laptop story. If we remember, 51 intelligence agents, former intelligence agents say that this laptop have the hallmarks of a Russian disinformation operation. And we've seen experts in the tech policy space come out and already say that this is garbage. Well, what data are they looking at? They say that they've looked at it and that it's a DDoS attack, which is a distributed denial of service attack. First off, do we really know how these kind of attacks work? I know that they go through, they say that the Ukraine area thing is kind of a false flag because, of course, anyone waging some type of cyber attack onto a large corporation like X, they're going to use proxies. They're going to take over foreign devices and things like that.
There is a lot of truth to being able to deflect and hide your source of attack with enough time and resources. I'm sure they can get more accuracy. I'm not coming here today to say anything definitive on who it was and who it wasn't. The idea that it stemmed out of I guess Musk's accusation that it came from Ukraine isn't something that we should rule out. But I think it's very clear today in March 2025 who Musk's enemies are. So I don't think it'd be very surprising when we do have more clarity on who is behind this.
Yeah, and they've just gone so quickly to all of this is garbage. Right. And, I tend to think that Elon is a pretty smart guy. I think it's been interesting to see him learn the political world in a very short period of time with a very short runway, taking on a very important position that has a deadline in the future of, supposedly it's July 4th, 2026, but, who knows what his special permissions will grant him, blah, 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 blah. All those different caveats. It's been interesting to see him learn that world, but here he is, tech kind of guy, born and raised, buys X. He has a lot of very talented engineers working for him, and it would be surprising to me that Musk is just firing from the hip when he's dealing with X and saying that, X can be taken down by a DDoS attack if there wasn't some, validity to it. I think Elon is getting his information from someone high-ranking at X who probably knows how these DDoS operations actually work.
Yeah, I would believe that as well. I think among big tech giants and the powers that do not want something like X to succeed, the knives are out. And this just happens to be one time where they got to punch through. I'm sure his platform is daily under an assault. And it's probably more surprising that we haven't had more outages since he bought it.
Yeah, it's I was sitting there thinking about this news of this cyber attack that no one wants to talk about. And I couldn't help but think of the Nord Stream pipeline event in September of 2026 or September of 2022. Now, I mentioned previously, right, they trotted out the corporate media in contra Musk, as they always must be now. They came out and said, here's all these tech experts who say that what Elon's saying is absolute garbage. But the reason that it reminded me not only of the Biden laptop, but of the Nord Stream 2 attack is because right after Nord Stream 2 blew up, there was this narrative sung by the U.S. government, by the Biden administration, by Western allies, by the corporate media, that the attack came from Russia. And that didn't really make any sense to folks who understood the dynamics of the conflict. Why would Russia sabotage its own pipeline that kept Europe under the thumb of Russia on energy policy, on energy supplies? And Europe was, of course, destroying its energy capabilities through all these net zero policies that they've been pursuing. And nevertheless, that was the narrative, even though we had reports that documents leaked in the Discord leak earlier showed that Ukraine wanted to blow up the pipeline. And this was leaked from if anyone remembers the Discord leak, it was this young man named Jack Teixeira who was part of this Discord server who radicalized him and convinced him to go grab these documents and leak them to the public. We had knowledge then that was happening. Seymour Hersh, after the Nord Stream 2 attack, was publishing that it could have been an operation between the Americans and the Norwegians. And, all of this, Seymour Hersh, a very accomplished journalist, the Discord leak, disregarded, buried under 10 feet of garbage. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden it becomes, in August of 2024, it becomes permissible, just like the COVID lab leak, just like so many things, right? The difference between conspiracy theory and the truth seems to be 6 months at this point. That's it.
Ain't that true?
Yeah, it ended up in August of 2024 that the Wall Street Journal reported it was indeed Ukrainian saboteurs led by the former head of the Ukraine armed forces. And I just say all of this because everyone is so quick to discredit any sort of Ukraine area involvement, and yet this slow drip that we see from across all of these news stories on some of the most important things that have happened in our republic in the last few years, eventually we get to what seems to be the most sensible explanation, that it wasn't Russia blowing up its own pipeline. It was actors invested in the downfall of some piece of infrastructure or some group that actually perpetrate the deed. Here, we don't know who it could be, but it seems like Elon Musk, as you said earlier, has made a lot of different enemies in this space.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And if there's some truth to the fact that this comes from Ukraine, I just got to ask, after you look past missiles and guns, what is most important in a modern war today? And it is connectedness. It's internet. And you know what is still in the sky right now? It's Musk's Starlink giving Ukraine their internet capabilities to be able to fight their war. If there's any truth to that, to them being partially behind this, what a dumb thing to do.
Yeah, what a dumb thing to do. This target on Elon's back, it's not just corporations or countries going after, hackers going after X. We saw a massive sell-off from Tesla recently, and Trump was out there with the Teslas in front of the White House saying, Elon didn't need this. And yet Elon's in some ways invited all of this on himself because he's taken a proactive role in politics now. But there's something uniquely, we talk a lot about Trump derangement syndrome. There might be Musk derangement syndrome now.
Most certainly. There's a lot of overlap. But it is crazy to see this kind of opposition to him. And I can't help but think it comes back to the idea that for his opponents, they just can't have him exist because it defeats their narrative. You can't have an Elon Musk because you can't have free speech like we want it in the modern enlightened world. You can't build businesses and entire industries from your own initiative, and you cannot restrain the size and scope of government, and you certainly can't have the coolest looking cars on the road. That's just my opinion, not the Heritage Foundation. So there's so many things that Elon, by his example, infuriates what I'll just mark up as the elites against him, because he is a living example of someone who bucks the trend that can encourage more people to live productive and good lives. You see the same sort of argument with extraordinary figures like Justice Clarence Thomas. Mm-hmm. There are just a few people in a generation that prove that there are holes in the narrative that a lot of our elites try and spin, that the American spirit, needs to just kind of a defeating of the American spirit and some lesson of learned helplessness that we ultimately is just not American.
Yeah, and this sell-off, Tesla has since rebounded after losing 15% of its value. Yeah. But, you spend more time in the tech space, in the financialization space. I mean, it just kind of looks like a coordinated hit on Elon Musk, where the elites who have presided over this constant financialization, this constant churn in the United States that has, really hollowed out the heartland and padded their pockets. Well, they don't like where this administration is heading, and they're going to try to take out what they see as an easy target in Elon Musk. Now, of course, Elon Musk is mega wealthy and can resist the hits, but sinking Tesla's stock is hitting Elon where it hurts, and it's trying to send a clear message. I can't help but take that away, that this is a veiled threat.
Absolutely. And it just kind of peels back the covers for us to have us realize, for a lot of the folks that wield power in this country, the economy is not just to provide, wealth and resilience and the American lifestyle. Like, it is not just a function of market efficiency. They see it as a means of control. They see it as a way to inject their values and their future on Americans they disagree with, because they see it as, the more efficient path, I guess, than the political process of trying to convince their neighbors on how to live good and worthy lives. So it's just it's one big trend to buck the republic that we have been blessed with, and this is the latest example.
It's a mega version of debanking, it feels like.
100%. That's a great way to put it.
Yeah, and in my intro to that previous question, I talked a little bit about how this financialization is ultimately alienating, right? It's abstracting the economy, and I can't help but pair that, right, their preference for the financialized economy with their preference for Silicon Valley, their preference for tech, right? There's something displacing about some of the big tech corporations and what they're trying to do, right? Peter Thiel talks about the economy of bits versus the economy of atoms, right? These people are focused on the economy of bits and not the physical well-being of the country. And that's, I think, a major difference between Elon and the rest of the tech oligarchs, where Tesla is thought of as a tech company. Of course, SpaceX is thought of as a tech company, but yet Elon is building things. He's working in the economy of atoms in ways that Zuckerberg and Bezos just are not.
Yeah, no, I think that goes directly to the question of what is innovation. Is creating the more addictive social media app to distract ourselves to death innovation? We certainly pay it like it is. The brain drain going into Silicon Valley to prop up our social media companies is, you could say it's market efficient, but is that really helping the country in the way that, creating the next generation of rockets and cars and internet connectedness is? No. I mean, 25 years ago, I think the state of political thought, it was challenging to make the case that it was better to make computer chips than potato chips, because if potato chips increase GDP more, we should just make potato chips. Well, we're living in the reality after that period of illusion, I guess, and realizing, actually, it matters what we make. It matters what we make. And we need to be able to, through our free market economy, be incentivizing and building out the things that unlock even more and more ecosystems and industries moving forward. And Musk is just one of those guys that is doing that far more than your average tech titan.
Yeah. Do you think that that's kind of the basis for this? Trump is a populist. Elon has populist tendencies, but he's still very much of the like Silicon Valley elite world, right? And yet they've kind of forged this friendship, like the right-wing populist billionaire versus like kind of the centrist populist billionaire, tech world, real estate world. And like it's just this weird mix this weird mix, but yet at the end of the day, I can't help sitting there and being like, maybe it's because they're both builders.
I think there's something to that. But I would also marry that to the idea of him looking around the rest of Silicon Valley and saying, well, that's crazy.
Yeah.
And realizing it was a choice between them and the president. And I'm thankful he chose the president.
Yeah. And a lot of others have decided that they are now all of a sudden choosing the president of the United States.
Right.
November elections happen. And all of a sudden, it was a mad dash to Mar-a-Lago where, all of these tech overlords were genuflecting to the incoming president, Donald Trump, and providing checks to the inauguration and standing behind him there. What made them change their tune so quickly and so radically, it felt like? I mean, of course, we had hints that maybe something was afoot because Mark Zuckerberg saw what happened when Trump was almost assassinated. And he said, I don't care who you are. That was really American. And I think that was just a genuine, authentic moment from Zuckerberg. Like, here's this guy an inch away from death, and he gets up and tells people to fight, fight, fight. But that was not like massive policy changes at any of his companies. That was just something that he said about a man who almost died in a TV interview, right? And then all of a sudden, the administration is preparing to come in. He's going down to Mar-a-Lago. They're giving checks to the inauguration. They are changing their DEI policies faster than they can even fire their DEI officers. What's with this change? Is this a genuine change? I mean, what's the source of it?
I certainly hope it can be. But I think we should take a step back for our listeners or viewers and just ask, what is the perspective of a big tech company? And when you have become such a dominant force in American life and in your industry, you have to ask, what are the biggest threats to my success? And often enough, it's not market competition. Often enough, it may not even be innovation. It's usually government action, whether that is merited or not. We pick your one thing that Silicon Valley is famous for is its innovation. It's innovation on anti-competitive practices. So there's a lot of things coming for that. But they all realize with Trump getting the White House after deplatforming him, burying him, trying to destroy him for years, that the biggest threat is not the market, but the president and the government that has rallied behind him. So they all saw it as a very affordable way to hedge their bets to try and make good before he went into power. So is that with the checks being cashed, are they getting a pass? No, I do not see that happening.
And it just makes me sit there and think, why is it that they were only ever afraid of Trump? What were Republicans not doing before President Trump came around to fight these big tech companies and to say, no, you're not going to just shadow ban us or deplatform us. You're gonna make sure that things are fair, that your community guidelines or whatever you want to call them these days are fair in treating people equally and with serious consideration of what the First Amendment is supposed to mean, not only in the public square but in the digital public square.
Right. That's a great point. To the talking point I had earlier of just evolving policy with the times. There was a time when conservatives generally didn't think that there was a role in had a much more constrained view of government action. And in the Trump era, there is a consensus now that we need to be taking these big tech giants, which have established themselves as the largest location for the public square in the country, that they need to be fair to every user, that they cannot be wheeling and dealing with American speech in a way that only props up their own sentiments, that they need to take their responsibility they need to be responsible with their duty to be the avenue for speech in America today, and we can't tolerate them picking and choosing how they apply their terms and services depending on who they like and don't like, and at this because of the reality of the 21st century, the world we live in. We can't just create another Facebook. We can't just create. We can't just expect a Musk to come out and buy a platform to deliver free speech for us. We need scrutiny on making sure that these platforms are fair to the users and good for American speech. And seeing Meta come about and changing their censorship practices to go towards the community notes model, like X has done, is tremendous news, and I hope they keep that. We want to reward good behavior. We want these companies to be aligned towards American values, like free speech. But that pressure can't be let up because, as you have pointed out, it would be so easy for us to lose this political moment and go right back to what they were doing before. If anything, we've learned from their flip-flopping on their supposed values on free speech and fairness. We can't trust them to have American values. We need to make sure that their incentives there are aligned with ours. And free speech is the first among them.
If this isn't necessarily about American values, if this is at the end of the day about market incentives, this change signifies that they feel like there is a threat from the Trump administration. Shortly after the president and Vice President J.D. Vance were sworn in, J.D. Vance did an interview with Margaret Brennan where he said these tech companies are very much on notice. How are these tech companies on notice? What could the administration pursue at the end of the day to make sure that these tech companies are playing things straight? What is the threat of regulation from the right?
Well, the first thing that pops to mind is that this is not a entirely unmarked industry as it stands. In that, we've actually been providing them a tremendous amount of subsidies and liability protection for them to develop as a big tech ecosystem. And we've been doing that for, some 25 years without evaluating as time went on, is this the appropriate use of our resources and, government protection? So I'm expecting that in this administration, they're going to take a hard look at Section 230 and the liability shield that provides.
What is Section 230?
Yeah, Section 230 is the government's protection on social media companies so that they are not liable for most things that are put on their platforms, just to put it generally. So if I were to be a deranged terrorist and upload something about wanting to, attack children on Meta, on Facebook, Facebook would not be liable for having that content there. They have policies to screen and take that down. But if someone is defaming someone online, X is not responsible, is not going to be sued for, having that been on their website. This is a huge gift to big tech. This is a huge gift to social media in general. And it's been taken for granted for a very long time. So there are a number of proposals over the last few years on how one would reform that, curve it back, eliminate it. And I think that the people going to the FCC are going through them and considering, is this the appropriate time to update Section 230?
And you mentioned they're going to take a close look at Section 230. And in the intro, the question that set this up, what's the threat of regulation from the right? Well, regulation, and I've talked about this before, because the audience sometimes hears, they're conservative, they hear regulation and they get nervous.
No.
Now, a regulation doesn't have to be something that is anti-market, that it can be something that is pro-market, beneficial to what we view as a fair and free market here in the United States. And of course, that gets us into, regulations or lawsuits centering around antitrust. What antitrust things is this administration going to be looking at? Should they be looking at it?
Yeah, I'm not going to pretend to have any secret knowledge there, but I can point to the fact that most of the major ongoing antitrust cases were started in President Trump's first term. He and his administration were ahead of the curve on recognizing that these giants exercise tremendous market power and often enough are using it to prevent competitors to market, to constrain them, any number of ways to maintain illegally their positions in their industries. So, the Department of Justice right now is currently going through the remedies of their Google search case, where Google was found to be a monopoly by the court. They're also going through their Google ad tech case, their alleged monopoly of advertising technology on the internet. And the Federal Trade Commission has suits against Amazon and Meta, to name a couple. So there are a number of investigations into more big tech firms. It's the entire industry is under scrutiny, and it's been almost 2 months.
Days, yeah.
It's been 2 months into the administration. You would think if the administration was looking to hard pivot from their original position, or even what Biden was able to do with these enforcement agencies, we would have seen it by now. Instead, what we see is the FTC maintaining the merger guidelines that were developed under the previous chair of the FTC, Lena Khan. So there is some enduring antitrust project there that has passed hands through very different administrations, and that's giving me confidence that that project is going to continue.
And it's, I think the number one solution that you see on Twitter is just break them up and scatter them to the winds and pound them to dust. It doesn't necessarily have to work out like that, and it most likely won't work out like that. But there are suits and there are cases that could prevent what we saw break this week in the Washington Post, where a Facebook whistleblower named Sarah Wynne Williams came forward and said that Facebook, Meta, Mark Zuckerberg was colluding with the Chinese Communist Party. They were going to extreme lengths, apparently, to censor content, to appease the Chinese government, to break in and solidify their position within the Chinese market. Yeah. This 78-page whistleblower complaint filed to the SEC has some pretty explosive accusations on AI in particular. Sarah Wynne Williams accuses Facebook of working with the Chinese Communist Party. They were briefing the Chinese Communist Party about advancements in technology and then lying to U.S. officials, Western officials, about sharing this information with the Chinese government. Your takeaways from that?
Hey, let the big tech firm that hasn't tried to cozy up to China throw the first stone. The reality is you are hard-pressed to find a big tech company that hasn't tried to break into the Chinese market, and that's not a condoning of this. It should be a mark of it should be damning. This is just one more example of one of our big tech firms demonstrating that it is not America first, that it's a globalist company, and it's not surprising, but it is terrifying.
And this was happening in 2015 to 2017 in that regulatory period, as we were talking about, where, as you've so eloquently stated, the number one threat to a big tech company is the federal government. And that can be our federal government here at home, or it can be the federal government of the Chinese Communist Party.
Yes.
And that means that you had on, the two fists or the two guns pointed at Facebook, Meta, these big tech companies at the time were the Obama administration to censor conservatives, and of course the Chinese Communist Party to not only censor content that was anti-China and promote content that was pro-China, but to also share developments, data, etc. So much of what we see with TikTok right now is just kind of the tip of the iceberg. And so let's say I decide that I'm a policymaker in Washington, I work for the administration, and I decide that, well, the Meta, Facebook needs to be held to account for collaborating with China in this way. What's my recourse, my avenue of recourse? How do if the court rules in my favor, what does that look like? I don't think it's going to look like smashing up Facebook likely into a million pieces, but you can bring them to heel in important, in serious ways.
Yeah. There's so many benefits to being a large company, but in this circumstance, it certainly shows one of the major downsides, which is if Meta was 1/100th its size, this wouldn't be a problem. But because it is so powerful in terms of scale, users, data, it cozying up to China and giving them access to American data, or even just adjusting its incentives to be less free speech oriented, and the possible seeping of that into its American services, it just shows how big of a threat this is. So what can the government do about this? There are a number of existing laws and regulations that deal with constraining foreign adversarial interests. I don't think you jump to antitrust when it comes to dealing with the threat of going to China for your interests. There are a number of other ways to do this. But, just to underscore why this is so terrifying, my understanding is one of the whistleblower's claims was, as an act of fealty, China was asking Facebook to censor someone in America. Not even, part of their country, but someone who is posting, in their perspective, dissident information in the United States about China. I don't know what Facebook decided to do in that, but the fact that maybe that they're even open to considering that is insane. And then that's how and then going into what China had planned for them if they were to execute on this deal. The fact that their Chinese version of Meta Facebook would have had a full-time editor position that came from the party, very similar to what TikTok has. The fact that they were contracting Facebook to create multiple sweeping censorship tools for the CCP to exercise on their people. What kind of company considers that? I don't think it's an American company. So yeah, we should not give up on pressure on big tech, even if they are, doing a number of positive things like the community notes thing here in the United States, because we're that close to losing them to that kind of autocratic garbage if we give up the pressure.
Yeah, and I mentioned the AI info sharing that Facebook was engaged in with the Chinese Communist Party when this was happening. I think the whistleblower worked on the China team for Facebook from 2015 to 2017, and this was happening in that period of time. And the fact that Meta, or it was then Facebook, I don't think Meta had been created yet, Facebook was briefing the Chinese on advancements that they were making in AI, should really terrify the heck out of everyone. Everyone knows that there is this competition over AI, the future of AI, between China and the United States. The funny thing is, no one really knows exactly what's at stake and what it's looking like.
Yes.
That, you know, I hear the words AI and it kind of washes over me, and I'm like, yes, it's very important, and we should be doing it. We should be innovating in this space. Watch this space, this AI space. You should watch it. You know, I don't have the technical know-how to understand how it really works. But what is this contest over AI that we are currently engaged in with China, and what are the stakes of it?
Yeah. Well, there's a fight on two fronts. There's a fight on adoption, and there's a fight on innovation. And you need both. You can have the best product in the world, but if the rest of the world is using Chinese AI, you will lose. And likewise, if you have a handle on getting adoption, but you just cannot keep up with innovation against our foreign adversaries, that is a long-term loss. So, what are the stakes? What is this AI race all about? This technological struggle is something that, unlike a lot of our technologies, the Chinese can't just reverse engineer. Our best technologies on AI are so advanced that they can't just open it up, copy and paste, create their own factory for it. We've been able to keep our edge on them for now. So because of that, there's a lot of effort going into making sure that since they cannot just recreate what we make, to make sure that they aren't getting what we make to be able to advance. So let me be more clear about what these things are. It comes down to semiconductors, chips, and AI models. Excuse me. And the end result there being AI models, that is what kind of made DeepSeek a flash in the news cycle. Is they have been able to make an open source, very successful AI model that competes with some of our best models. And in order to do so, they needed a ton of cutting edge chips to do it. And they can't make all these chips themselves. Not the cutting edge best chips in the world that are required to make the best models today. So they have smuggled them in this way and that way, tried to find alternative sources, and the last thing the Biden administration did on the way out the door was trying to add more guardrails to make sure China isn't getting those chips. I think there are a number of issues with their AI diffusion plan, and I expect the Trump administration to provide more clarity and leadership there to make sure that our chips aren't just ending up in China in a way that could give them the advantage to take the technological leap over us.
Mm-hmm. Of course, the Chinese government is subsidizing the heck out of this.
Yes.
And to a certain degree, there is subsidies happening here in the United States. They're not very effective.
Yeah.
Think of the CHIPS Act, right? We want to subsidize creating chips here in the United States. Of course, we are courting through, hopefully, deregulation and good items in the tax code. We are, quote unquote, subsidizing manufacturers like TSMC to come to the United States to build more plants, to invest. Of course, President Trump had a meeting in the White House and a press conference with CC Wei, the TSMC, the largest company in the world that manufactures semiconductor chips, the kind of which you need to run these AI programs. And they announced that they are going to be investing $100 billion into the U.S. economy. Is there ways that we should be thinking about, kind of on the trade front as tariffs are so hot right now? Is there something that we could do on the trade front there and say, hey, we appreciate, thanks but no thanks to all these various AI products coming out of China that are being produced for allegedly cheaper, but really are being subsidized by the communist government there?
Right. Always take with a grain of salt any number coming out of the CCP.
Mm-hmm.
You saw the same thing in the Cold War with the Soviet Union. It just built on lie after lie after lie.
Mm-hmm.
So what is true is that DeepSeek works. What is most likely not true is to your point, how much did it cost? How much energy did it take to do it? Yeah, tariffs, scary T word. But the reality is the United States can't wage the AI war, the race for AI innovation alone. We need to make, to the point of needing to innovate and have adoption, we need to have the free world on our side. We need to make sure that, for example, Germany chooses the eagle over the dragon. If Europe and other parts of the world say, it's actually cheaper for us because of Chinese subsidies to build our ecosystem, our emerging AI ecosystem, which is, will transformative effects on almost every part of the economy in Mandarin, we stand to become dependent on them as well.
We talked about adoption and innovation. The administration's line to Europe so far, right? You need the free world on your side. The message from Vance in particular at the AI summit was, we are much more pro AI than many of our European friends. Yes. And he was trying to push the Europeans in a regulatory direction where they would be more amenable to the adoption of U.S. AI technology, more invested in the creation of the AI economy. What are the current divides between how the current administration, the Trump administration, is looking at AI versus how Brussels, the European Union, and some of these other European countries are looking at AI?
Yeah. My family has a funny joke that we always roll our eyes when we hear safety first, because anytime you're in an environment where someone says safety first, it's never safety first. If you're flying on a plane, your first objective is to get to the location. Safety should be second. But the same thing applies to this to this scenario. Europe and the Biden administration were obsessed about AI safety, and this, maybe you could give them the benefit of the doubt here, but I think it's played out to be seen that appeals to safety from these bodies have largely been appeals to control, to be able to say, hey, this is a widely influential technology, from our chatbots to our economic drivers, and we want a piece of that. We want to make sure that whatever it creates, we like, and whatever it creates that we don't like, we stop. It's why you see so much that was invested and agreed to in these international pacts and the AI Safety Institute to screen, to provide an excessive amount of oversight and compliance that the Trump administration has agrees with our take. It seems from their comments that we're just overly restrictive and hindered innovation and restricted our ability to be technological leaders. So this is not the same as saying throw out regulation, throw out oversight. No one wants AI creating bioweapons, but the overemphasis on safety was probably, perhaps still is probably, the greatest threat to our technological competitiveness against China, who, as we know, cares far less for the welfare of the world and their people.
And JD said something really, really interesting in this AI speech, because obviously the populist concern is that AI is going to displace a whole bunch of people, that these folks are not going to have jobs, their jobs are going to be replaced by AI. But JD seemed, we previously talked about the economy of bits and the economy of atoms, and JD seemed very bullish on the idea that AI is going to be playing a role in the economy of atoms while not displacing a whole bunch of people. He said, quote, AI is, quote, grounded in the real and physical economy. Do you agree with the vice president's assessment? How is AI, which we think of this amorphous algorithm thing that you talk to at ChatGPT and you get answers to questions that you have, how is this grounded? How is AI in the future going to be grounded to the real physical economy?
Yeah, I think if you're comparing it to big tech, it is far more grounded, far more in the world of atoms, because it requires It requires a tremendous amount of energy and an investment. It is breaking into public life more than what ones and zeros social media has done. If you start seeing autonomous trucks and taxis, robots, and the like, these are real physical innovations that affect our corporeal lives. I'm not here to make predictions on when each of these things are going to break into common adoption, but the ceiling for being a physical product is much higher for AI than it is for what we've typically seen from big tech products.
Mm-hmm. Because you can actually condense it and apply it to, physical machinery that's working at a constant pace.
Yes.
This concern about displacement, is it well founded? Is there certain limitations to the ways in which AI can disrupt the labor market?
We have a choice. We have a choice for how we adopt AI innovation and automation in our industries. And I think the vice president has it right in saying in any opportunity, we should be asking, how do we augment labor rather than replace labor?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a question that virtually every company in the United States of any reasonable size is going to have to deal with. When I'm hiring, am I what is the role of the individual and the role of the AI tool to the individual? So yes, there will be tremendous disruption. I believe in that. But we have it in our power to try and be good stewards of this technology and encourage our business leaders to seek to augment rather than replace.
Mm-hmm.
There will still be losers. There will still be winners. But we're ideally entering a world where greater automation and productivity gains will produce far better jobs in more numbers than we can see right now. Mm-hmm. Everyone points back to before the personal computer, where we had a massive industry of typists. Purely your job was to write and to make sure the written product is able to be read and published and et cetera. And this was all done away with the personal processor and Microsoft Word. We have experienced, if that's the example to compare to here, we've experienced far more growth in jobs relative to the American population through the personal computer than we lost with the career of typing. Mm-hmm. And I think we owe it to ourselves to try and do the same thing here.
You mentioned previously that this is going to take a massive amount of energy. It's going to take real physical infrastructure. Is the U.S. currently prepared to enter into this AI economy? I think a lot of people think that it's just the technology that's being developed, that it'll get there at some point. But ChatGPT is getting pretty darn good. A lot of these AI products are getting pretty darn good. Are we prepared to make the leap in terms of our physical infrastructure for an AI economy?
Is this before or after we get Greenland?
I mean, it could be either. Give me both scenarios. Is Greenland going to change the game here?
The cold with the data centers and the oil reserves. I'm joking. But relative, again, it's all relative to the world. Relative to the world, absolutely. Mm-hmm. China is starving for energy. They're drumming up every piece of coal that they can find in their country and destroying their land for it. Europe doesn't have the energy resources that they need either. Look at how much energy they still take from Russia. The United States, for all of our problems, I'll take those problems, for the tremendous wealth of resources that we've been blessed with. If anyone has a shot of, jumping on the rocket here for AI, it's us. And we have an administration that is perhaps the most favorable for it in our history. So, I am optimistic. Yeah, you'll see California and others, ironically with Silicon Valley there, kind of try and not drill, baby drill. But we have it in our power, and we have the best chance on this globe to do it.
And I think when we look at, it's not only relative preparedness, it's that physical infrastructure. I mean, those are job creators in and of themselves. We look at, this type of augmentation versus replacement of labor that the vice president wants, that this administration wants, that AI wants. I think President Trump has said it repeatedly that, like, we don't want this technology to be replacing people. We want it to support people. And I think one of the major complaints that people of yours and I's generation have about our economy is this kind of gigification. And if you have this AI augmentation, of course, the folks who are arguing that AI is going to replace a lot of people in the labor market are concerned that those people are going to be engaged in the gig economy, right? They're going to be doing the Uber driving or the whatever. And then all of a sudden the self-driving cars will come for Uber. And then what do these people do, right? So they're hopping around and hopping around and hopping around. But the augmentation side, right? A vision for a economy, a labor market that is augmented, that is becoming more productive because of AI. The effects on the labor market seem to be that people are going to have better paying jobs and staying in the single job for a longer period of time, staying with a company, working through the ranks, right? This is kind of like, in a weird way, this massive technological innovation that could lead to a lot of disruption can also return us to an older form of the economy that I don't think you or I have seen in our lifetimes, where you can start at a company when you're young, you can have a company invest in your skills and talents, and you can stay there for a really, really long time.
Yeah. Which way, American man? I think you have it right. And the way I generally frame these things is, are we pursuing technology as a centralizing force or as a decentralizing force? And AI, that is one of the largest questions for AI. Is this going to be something that sucks up our talent to the coasts and makes a stratified society of those who have good work and those who are doomed to always live in the gig economy? Or is this a sort of technology that will allow far more parts of this country to tap into our economy, to be able to experience that connectedness through how much AI and its influence on our broadband can spread jobs and information and provide more places to be able to build the infrastructure that we need to sustain this kind of growth. The reality is you can design an AI tool to even be disconnected from the internet and just operate off of your personal device. You don't need it to be plugged into a larger hive mind controlled by a big tech company. There are so many practices and innovations that we can choose to pursue that will allow for the vast majority of Americans to benefit from the wealth that AI can bring us. But that's not guaranteed. We have just as much of a chance for us to take the scary path towards greater concentration, greater centralization at the expense of the majority of Americans. So that's what we're about here at the Heritage Tech Policy Center. We want to be friends of little tech. We want to be friends of technology as a positive innovation that isn't seeking to exploit and addict, but trying to take existing communities and build them up and have a variety of competition and ideas throughout the country that ultimately better serves the American public. We cannot, as a country, survive on innovation in Silicon Valley alone. And I think AI provides a tremendous opportunity for far more people to be getting into the innovation game than just California.
Well, it's a big decisive moment, and the administration seems to know it. Thank you for the work that you do on this critical issue, making sure that those of us who hardly know how to work our Excel documents are trying to keep up with all the advancements happening in the AI space. Wes Hodges, thank you for coming on the Signal Sit Down.
It's been my pleasure.
Thank you so much for tuning into the Signal Sit Down. Before you go, be sure to hit like and subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, or wherever you may be joining us. And please remember to give us a 5-star review. We not only love your feedback, but it really does help the show. Remember, it's your government, and together we'll expose how it really works. See you next time.